Hi, I'm Anna Karp. I'm CEO and co-founder of Bolster, a design and build company in New York City, and I am also a general contractor. Today, I want to show you what it would take to restore this New Orleans property to bring it back to its original glory. Let's go take a look. We're in Central City in New Orleans. New Orleans was founded by Jean-Baptiste Lemoyne Souk du Bienville, and despite his engineers' recommendations, decided to found the city very close to the Mississippi River. Building so close to the water created a lot of implications for the city. In the mid-1800s, a lot of the parts that we see in different New Orleans homes were shipped by way of the Mississippi River through catalogs. And throughout this episode, we will see how water has impacted the way we build. Let's go take a look. This house is beautiful, starting with the entrance. We can notice here that we have very heavy porch doors, and what we would consider in New York or the Northeast to be like a storm door is actually in New Orleans a door that helps us with the egress on the access of the house, but also with ventilation. And here is the actual front door of the house. So this is the main door, and these porch doors may have been open or they may have been shut in order to keep the heat out or to let people in. As I walk into this house, the first thing I see is this beautiful staircase. This house would have been built for a middle-class family at the time. And what I notice immediately is that this staircase is not only beautiful, it's also sturdy. I can see immediately the curved details that mirror the Italianate style that we have in the porch and throughout the windows and doors of the house. As we look up into the staircase and into the back, we see what an elegant turn we have at the top of the second floor. And as we look in the underbelly of the staircase, we can actually see how it was built. So this for a contractor is an actual joy because we're looking at the underbelly of a Civil War era staircase. At the bottom here, we see that the nose is broken, so that's definitely a piece that needs to be remade. And as we look in here, we can see that the timber is two different colors. Even though they're not the cypress color, they're hard pine, which is the other timber that was used at the time. And we can see the nails, and that's how I infer that. Whilst this piece is a different color, it's probably because it wasn't used so much or it was covered by a different layer of wood, but it's still an original sturdy piece. Here we are in the second floor at the front of the house, and this is actually like the cherry on top of the ice cream and possibly, in my view, the best room in the house. I just wanted to call out the spacing in between the studs here in the second floor. It's very nice to see how the house was actually built. It's stripped down to its originals and its most basic, sturdy, structural self. And I love seeing that. If this was my home, I would actually leave this area as an open space, and I would leave this beautiful frame intact. It's very chic right now, and possibly everybody can see it trendy to leave like aged pieces that have some character in the home, and it would be very easy to integrate it if you were like painting or using very fun wallpaper. I am actually not opposed to having a bathroom here. I think that's a really good improvement in order to create a very good primary suite. Importantly, as we look into the structural aspect of the house, we can see that there's a crisscross here with the studs. This is structural reinforcement. Now, the house could be wonkier considering it's from the Civil War era. The point in which this house was built, this was the way in which we used to reinforce. And in this cross segment, we can actually see the difference between new pine that like maybe grew for like 20, 30 years and was like basically grown for construction, in comparison with the old growth cypress that probably had like, you know, a good amount of decades, if not hundreds of years, to grow before it was chopped down by the settlers. So you can see that the greenage is absolutely different, the color is different, and interestingly, the sound is different. Now, this area is also the cherry on top of the ice cream because it's where you can have access to the most beautiful part of the house. We're now in the second floor porch, and this is an absolute beauty. I want to call out the Italianate details here, the semi-arched windows, and the beautiful balustrade that has the columns ending halfway through the elevation. We can see in different Greek Revival properties across New Orleans that these columns go all the way to the top. However, this feature seems to be decidedly Italianate. I want to point your attention to the beautiful brackets. Those have the nuance and the little detail at the end. But what's really outstanding for me is that we can find those brackets in an old Victorian catalog book. So if you look closely, our plate 2031 includes the exact same architectural detail that we see in this home. We can also see that this roof is sloping, which is an Italianate feature. And we can find the balustrades here, which are original from the era. The balustrades can also be found on the catalogs, and I just find it fascinating to show you a catalog that is exactly from the Victorian era. New Orleans had a culture of millwork, and some enthusiasts put together books with architectural details, plates, and plans so that people could go ahead and build the layouts and have the architectural details that they desired, anything from Greek Revival to Queen Anne and obviously Italianate. This is the parlor, which is a very important part of the public life of a family in New Orleans. The parlor connects directly into the front porch, and a lot of our lives here in this city are lived in the porch. Importantly, in the parlor, we can see the proportions of the structure. This house was built to breathe. It was built to expand and contract. It was built to let water flow in order to avoid damage. Airflow and circulation is a theme that is seen throughout that helps us preserve the property as it is right now. And interestingly, it also ties into our way of life. Here we have a beautiful example of porch windows, which are very New Orleans. They have a pulley mechanism. We can see here some of the stringers. While a normal door would be 6'8", we can see that these windows are 35 to 40% larger, giving the house that elegant look, but also allowing the air to flow from the exterior. At the time in which this house would have been built, people would have cooked with coal in a cast iron stove, and they would have heated the house with coal as well. And here in this parlor, we see that the current owner decided to refurbish the fireplaces in order to have wood burning fireplaces. If this was my house, I would definitely restore them. We can see at the back as we move into the dining area that these frames are also outsized, giving the house a grandeur that is very specific to the Italianate style. So as we walk into the dining room, we can see again the generous proportions of the wainscoting. If I stand here next to the wainscoting, we can see that it's very high level. And we can see that it's, even though it's restrained, it's got beautiful features. So this is definitely something I would choose to restore. We can see that we also encapsulate some of the airflow that we had at the very front of the house. We have two windows that are flanking, again, what would have been a coal fireplace. But we also have the doors that would be the exit into the back of the porch. Let's remember that properties of this period would have been divided into 4 segments. 2 segments at the front of the house, at the bottom and at the top for the public life, and 2 segments at the back of the house for the private area. As we move out of the dining room, we walk into what would have begun to be the back of the house or part of the private area of the house. I've gotten different accounts of the section here of this room as we move into the kitchen. Some people say that this was the smoking room where men would retire to have a cigar, and some people say that this is where women would retire to do crochet. Either way, what we gather is that as you moved into this section of the house, people sought to have a little bit more intimacy. In the kitchen, we would have had the stove at the back, and we would have also had beautiful, gigantic built-ins and pantries that would have housed all the ingredients needed to cook. And while the people that lived here weren't wealthy, they would have had a housekeeper and a number of people on staff to help them provide for their needs. As we look down at the back of the house, we can also see the start of a staircase. And this is a very telling factor, because if we think of this room as the operating room or the engine of the house, we can think about the back staircase as the connector into that other layer of privacy. Interestingly, here, we also have the doors that everybody knows as the French doors, which is very appropriate in Louisiana. We will use this door to go out into the veranda or the back porch. Follow me to see a little bit more about the foundations of the home. Back in the 18th century, New Orleans suffered from a big flood. So by the time in which this house would have been built, it would have already been part of the architectural culture to raise the properties in order to future-proof them. And it's very interesting to me to think about how this ties into climate change, into Hurricane Katrina, and into Ida. How would we be able to know if a property like this is able to future-proof for these changes? Being a detective and kneeling down, we can find that here's the bottom of the belly of the house. We have structural elements like crisscrosses that support the beams that are going across the property. It's still all cypress, and it's basically holding up the entire structure. It's very, very sturdy, and for some reason the owner decided to reinforce with concrete. Raising the property is as important in order to protect the property from water, but it's also important to have the property breathe. We can see that we continue the theme of air circulation, and we continue the theme of the mobility of the house in order to adapt to its climate. We're in the second floor at the back of the house, and this would have been the area where the homeowners would have bathed. There was no plumbing and no electric, so bathing would have been a mission, and everybody would have had to take turns. The water would have had to have been heated manually and brought upstairs. It was a room that was multi-purposeful in the sense that everybody was here, and in the sense that it didn't really have a name and a last name, like it wasn't the primary bedroom or the children's bedroom. It was just a room that everybody shared access to. This is a corridor as much as it is a wind corridor. We can see that there's a tunnel of breeze all the way back from the second floor back porch and into this area. We can also see here that the floor is sloped, and it's sloped for a reason. water would basically just drain down. We will also see here that there's some beautiful details that are the ventilation outlets, which help the attic and the top of the house breathe as well. So we continue with the theme of letting air in and letting air out and having that flow throughout the house, even on the second floor. It is fascinating to me and very interesting to think that settlers in the mid-1800s had both the proactivity and the do-it-yourself, beautiful American attitude of building homes. It's amazing that a lot of the parts that we see in different homes were actually just like easily acquired. And you know, when we think of New Orleans and we think about the Italianate style, it's also like romantic and fascinating to think that the parts from the millwork shops around here were shipped by way of the Mississippi River. Another very interesting takeaway for me in this property is the high quality of construction. A middle-class family in that era would have had a house that, you know, can last almost 200 years. And I wonder how that compares to the developments that middle-class Americans have access to right now. Looking back, we know now that Jean-Baptiste decided to found New Orleans in a less than ideal area. We know now that his decision might have been a little bit selfish. His engineers recommended that New Orleans was founded far away from the Mississippi. It is a reality with which we have to live right now, and that, you know, people in New Orleans have adapted to. However, it is because of him that houses are raised, and it is because of him that like an architectural style has emerged in this city. But I do invite us to think about urban planning and the developments of our cities and the way we build, considering climate change and considering the footprint and the impact that we're having in our environment. Sustainability is no longer a luxury. It's something that we need to integrate as builders and as renovators or restorators into every single decision that we make when we refurbish a home. A lot goes into creating an episode like this. First and foremost, I'm grateful to my team, Nicole Case and Anna Petropavlovsky, who put a lot of literature together. And I would like to thank Ina Selkov, who kindly lent me her Victorian catalogs with the promise that I wouldn't ruin them. And I would like to thank the neighbors who live in Baronne Street, Kirsty, who has a millwork shop and restores windows and doors for a living, and Jeanette, who is a preservationist, a stalwart of the culture of New Orleans. I would like to thank the New Orleans archives. They're very organized, and Jackson there pointed us in the right direction as to where to find records of the home. I'm also very thankful to Robbie, who did a walking tour, but also was like my introduction into New Orleans architecture. If this was your home, what would you do? How would you restore it, and how would you design it? What is your vision? I think this is an excellent property for us to dream big and to truly see ourselves living in a porch in a southern way.